Today I celebrated my 60th birthday. My husband William is the same age, so we are both celebrating our 60th together. Despite this, William often sits in front of the television, scratching his bum and letting out farts. Now, there are absolutely no heart-stopping moments of being attracted to him as a man, but I still feel more at ease with him than anyone else. I truly believe that this is happiness. Today, our only son invited us, his wife, and my grandchild to his house to celebrate our 60th birthdays.
Where's my suit and tie, Ellie?
At his age, William still calls me Ellie. I hand him his suit and favorite tie, freshly dry cleaned and free of their plastic wrapping. I'm really happy that they're celebrating our 60th birthdays, but it's a strange feeling to realize that I'm already 60. When I think that the life I have left to live is shorter than the life I've already lived, my feelings are mixed. Then William says,
It's a strange feeling to be celebrating our 60th birthdays, isn't it?
His words make me feel glad that I'm not alone in these feelings. He adds,
We've had some tough times, but to be able to celebrate this together is really great.
That is one of the things I love about William. It makes me think about the life we've been through together. Perhaps because I had a brother, I was never interested in girly activities growing up. I always found it more fun to be active and play with boys, so I joined the kendo club and always hung out with boys. When I was little, I didn't feel out of place, but as I got older, the physical difference became obvious.
Don't you have a girlfriend? You're so tiny.
Boys used to tease me, but perhaps because of my brother's influence, I was able to enjoy the teasing without feeling out of place. It never really bothered me. However, this personality meant that I was rarely seen as a woman. So even when couples formed around me, I was always left out. It was never a problem when I wasn't interested in romance, but when I was in 5th grade, there was someone I started to care about. That was William. William was in the volleyball club and I was in the kendo club, so we shared the gym. Although we had many opportunities to see each other, for some reason I couldn't meet his eyes in front of him and would look down. We had fought together just the year before. Even when I was in bed, I couldn't get William out of my mind, and I found myself following him around the classroom and sports hall with my eyes. Not knowing what this new feeling was, I felt anxious as my heart tightened day by day. Could I be ill? I fought seriously and finally decided to confide in my grandmother. She laughed and said,
Ellie, you're in love.
She also told me,
It's proof that you're growing into a mature woman.
when I asked, I love my grandmother, my father, my mother, and my friends, but I don't feel that way about anyone else. What's different? She replied,
It's called falling in love.
That was the first time I knew that this feeling was love. I hadn't imagined that I would experience such feelings, and I remember feeling a little embarrassed. William and I sat next to each other on our first day of school. He was my first friend, and we played together every day until we were separated into different classes in 3rd grade. He stood out among our classmates because of his brightness and athleticism. I had always enjoyed being with him, but when we were in the same class again in 5th grade, I began to feel strange. And when I realized that I was in love with William, it became even harder to talk to him normally. My heart would race when I walked past him. At first, I was content to just watch him, but before I knew it, I started making an effort to be around him, even though I was too embarrassed to strike up a conversation. And so my mind was filled with farts of William all day. I wanted to play with him and talk to him like I did with other boys, but I couldn't do it. Then one day after school, William called out to me in the playground. My heart was pounding inside me, but I turned around and pretended to be calm. Then he said,
Ellie, you haven't talked to me lately, and I feel like you're avoiding me. I don't really understand. Do you hate me?
Hate you? That's the last thing. It's quite the opposite. I fought, but I couldn't say it. I was embarrassed that my feelings would be exposed. I couldn't even say, that's not true. I ran away. After that, I found it even harder to talk to him. Even after primary school, we went to the same secondary school and were always in the same class. Although I was always in love with William, I was unable to be honest about my feelings and spent my days watching him from a distance. William, on the other hand, probably thought I did not like him. He stopped talking to me. My feelings of love only increased and I felt frustrated and helpless, sometimes crying alone in bed at night. But I didn't know how to end my long-term unrequited love. By this time, William had grown taller and excelled at sport, so I think he was quite popular with the girls. I was afraid he would get a girlfriend, but I was so shy and lacked confidence that I couldn't do anything about it. One day I heard a rumor that William confessed his feelings to a girl in our class called Alice. I was deeply shocked. I had never thought that he and I were in love, but it was painful to learn that he liked another girl. Besides, Alice was a sweet girl with long, wavy hair, quite unlike my tomboyish buzz cut. Anyway, it turned out that Alice had rejected his confession. I was honestly relieved, but Alice laughed and said,
"This guy is out of the question. Our backgrounds are completely different. He needs to know his place."
The other girls laughed too, but I didn't think it was funny at all. I couldn't believe she was talking like that, even though she wasn't going out with him. Alice always had a smiling, friendly face in front of everyone, but I was furious when I found out she was talking behind our backs. Her parents were wealthy company directors and she often flaunted her wealth, so I thought she put that before love. But William couldn't give up on Alice and tried very hard to win her over, as you could see when you watched them. William didn't know about Alice's duplicitous behavior. She was being suggestive towards him, but when talking to the girls, she'd say,
"It was hilarious when that guy talked to me again today,"
using him as a topic of conversation. My anger was reaching its limit, but I didn't know what to do. However, I felt sorry for William, who seemed unable to move on. One day, I was the pupil on duty and was writing a diary in the classroom after school. But my mind was filled with farts of William and Alice, and I couldn't concentrate. Then the classroom door opened and there was William. He seemed uncomfortable when he saw me, quickly walked to his seat, grabbed a notebook he had left behind, and tried to leave. My heart ached, but I couldn't help it, for I had run away without clearing up the misunderstanding from his previous question. But today I couldn't keep quiet. Bum. Before I knew it, I had called out to him. William turned in surprise as I called out to him. It had been years since we had spoken face to face, and I could feel my heart pounding. But I hadn't thought about what I wanted to say, so there was a long, awkward silence. Despite this, William kindly waited for me without rushing. His kindness made me so happy. I couldn't bear to see such a kind person become Alice's plaything. I wanted to help him. My feelings overflowed and I felt courageous. "I think you should stop seeing Alice," I finally managed to say. I couldn't wait to see his reaction. It was easy to tell him the reason, but I couldn't bear the thought of how he would feel if he knew he was being talked about behind his back. I imagined it would hurt him and make him sad. So I couldn't bring myself to tell him the truth. But I didn't know what else to say, so I fell silent again. Then William said something unexpected.
Are you saying that Alice and I aren't right for each other?
He asked, his voice sounding incredibly sad. I unintentionally raised my head in surprise and said, "Huh?" But by then William had already turned his back on me and was leaving the classroom. That's not what I meant. I could have cleared up the misunderstanding, but once again I couldn't find the courage to say the words. I suspect that by this time William had heard rumors about why Alice had rejected him. I think he was deeply hurt by my words and worried about things like his family background and wealth, things he had no control over. Even though it was a misunderstanding, things became even more awkward between us after that incident, and we didn't make eye contact until we left school. I assumed that since we had gone our separate ways after school, we would never see each other again. I couldn't even clear up the two misunderstandings, let alone confess my feelings. So I ended up saying goodbye to 8 years of unrequited love. I couldn't stop crying for a while. If I'd been more honest earlier, even if we couldn't be together, we might have made some memories together. If I had had the courage to clear up the misunderstanding, I might have avoided hurting William. As I thought about these things, I felt regret. I entered a junior college and spent my first few days there crying every day because I couldn't forget William. But thanks to not seeing his face, my feelings gradually calmed down. Although I still couldn't bring myself to date, I enjoyed my college life. Then, when I turned 20, William appeared at my high school reunion. I recognized him immediately. Whether it was because I was staring too hard or not, our eyes locked instantly. He walked up to me and called out,
"Ellie."
I never dreamed he would speak to me after graduation, with the misunderstanding still there. Perhaps the 2 years had made us more mature. We did not talk about the past, but we did manage to spend a few minutes talking about harmless things. For the first time in a suit, he looked really cool and brighter than anyone else.
Long time no see.
Alice, who came in saying that, was as beautiful as ever. William, chatting with Alice, who still had beautiful hair and a stunning figure, looked happy. Feeling out of place, I left my seat. William was at an incredibly prestigious university that would surprise anyone who heard of it. At the time, Alice had told him to know his place, but it was a complicated reminder that her attitude could change as soon as circumstances did. But there was nothing I could do about it. The joy of the reunion was short-lived, and I spent the rest of the time with that cloudy feeling. 4 years later, I heard that William and Alice had got married. I thought I had been the intruder after all. They were high school students then, and even Alice must be an adult now. If the two of them are happy now that they're grown up, then that's good enough. While my feelings for William were indeed true, as I approached my mid-20s, I processed them as nostalgic memories and came to wish them happiness. Although I dated several men, I was not blessed with a partner and ended up celebrating my 30th birthday as a single woman. The only people who celebrated with me were my parents. My friends were too busy with their own births and child rearing to get together. Although being single at 30 is not unusual now, it was a time when relatives and parents worried. I'll probably have to have an arranged marriage for my parents' sake, I thought. Then there was a middle school reunion for the first time in 10 years. I wasn't as nervous as before, but William was there. I no longer have romantic feelings for him, but he is still someone I find somewhat curious, and I felt a sense of unease at his seemingly forced cheerfulness. When the first party was over and everyone was thinking about where to go next, I decided to talk to him. Long time no see. I said,
"Ellie, long time no see."
He smiled, but I still felt that he was somehow lacking in energy. I asked unintentionally, "Are you all right?" And William looked at me in surprise.
Why?
I told him that ever since I'd seen him that day, I'd felt that he didn't seem well. Then William said something surprising.
"Actually, I get divorced. The company went bankrupt due to the bursting of the bubble, and my wife proposed a divorce because I couldn't find a new job,"
he confessed. When I heard this, I felt a wave of anger. I always thought marriage was about supporting each other through hard times. Unemployment must be terrible, but it is at times like this that I thought a couple should support each other.
"But it can't be helped. Sorry for worrying you."
He tried to brush off his worries with a bright smile. Seeing him try to brush it off, I couldn't bring myself to smile either. How could this happen to such a nice person? Before I knew it, tears were streaming from my eyes. I didn't even know why I was crying. Seeing my surprise, I told William, "I will support you as much as I can. You can get back on your feet. Don't worry, I'll be cheering you on." Even though I was crying and sounded untrustworthy, William smiled and said,
"Thank you."
His smile, I felt, was the most genuine smile he'd shown me in decades. After exchanging contact details that day, we began to communicate occasionally. As for Alice, his ex-wife, I heard that she had remarried but had been cheated on and divorced again. She kept marrying and divorcing and was eventually abandoned by her parents and was now working in a nightclub. I felt a little sorry for her, but I couldn't help thinking that perhaps it was divine retribution for putting money and personal gain before people's feelings. As for us, William managed to find a new job. He qualified and was promoted. Whenever something good happened, he would invite me over. I could see that he was sometimes feeling down, but being able to support him in those moments made me incredibly happy. One day he asked me to marry him. To be honest, I thought he'd had enough of marriage because he'd been divorced before. So I was fine with not getting married or having children as long as I could support him.
I know I'm not much, but I want you to be by my side for the rest of our lives. I believe that with you, Ellie, we can have the happiest family in the world.
I couldn't have imagined that one day I would hear those words from him. Here we were, back together again, celebrating our 60th wedding anniversary. In our married life, I realized that the path that seemed wrong at the time could lead to something completely unexpected. When we entered our house, where our son was waiting, there was a big cake and a knife on the table, even though it was our 60th birthday party. We hadn't had a wedding ceremony because it was William's second marriage and we were both quite old. So the thoughtful preparation by our children was both embarrassing and delightful. After we had eaten the meal they had prepared, our granddaughter secretly came to me and whispered,
Grandma, I've been feeling heavy in the chest lately, and there's someone I can't stop thinking about, and I can't really talk to him. And my heart is pounding out of nowhere. Do you think it's a disease?
With nostalgic feelings, I smiled and said, "That's what they call love," passing on her grandmother's wisdom.